after rewatching all of these videos and going through my scripts, I realized that I never really introduced myself, although I introduced all of my fellow docents. So I'm Rochelle, and I think I've been with the St. Dom's docent group for about 3 or 4 years now with COVID. I think it's 4, but 3 or 4. Anyways, but I'm still learning. And today's segment, or well, I guess our next series of segments, are going to be on our stained glass. So if you haven't checked out some of our earlier videos, definitely do check those out because we talk about the history of St. Dominic and we talk about the elements of Gothic architecture, which some of that I will be going over today, but not in as much detail as I did with those earlier videos. And my fellow docents did as well, went over those in more finer detail in those other videos. So these videos are going to tend to be very short, and from only these first couple of video windows that you can see behind me, there's quite a few of them, and there's a lot of elements in them that we need to discuss. So unfortunately, we're going to have to do smaller segments of these because I really rather not talk to you for 2 hours and bore you to death on windows and symbolism, but we will break it up into several videos and maybe it'll be a little bit more fun that way. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen here. All right, so as you can see, there is beautiful, beautiful stained glass from this picture. Yes, this was taken with my phone, so I'm sorry about quality wise. All of these pictures were taken by my phone that I have in this presentation, except for the ones I found online, so those might be better quality. But as you can see, lots of stained glass, lots of things to talk about. I don't want to go into all of them right now with this talk. The first thing that I really need to talk to you about is the terminology, because you're going to need to know that when we present, because there's several terms that we will cover and or will say, and then you will be like, I don't know what that thing is. So I want to make sure that you guys got the terms down. And then I also want to go into the artist because we have to acknowledge who gave us these works of beauty. So let's get started with this. Okay. This is the floor plan of St. Dominic's. So yes, this is the actual like floor plan map. So if you kind of turn your head to the side a little bit, you'll notice that this looks a lot like a cross. And you are correct. It is a cruciform floor plan. So we have the nave. Now the nave is where the lay people would sit for mass and stuff like that, or just to pray whenever they, adoration or any of those other forms of worship. They can sit in the nave. The apsis is where we would see the altar. There are some choir stalls in the apsis as well. This is for the friars when they pray their morning prayer and evening prayer. It's also for when we actually have a full choir, they would sit up there normally, or up in the choir loft, which is back up here behind the nave. It's like right here probably. And then we have the vestibule over here with the baptistry. We have the north and south transepts right here. And the north and south transepts are basically more seating for the lay people. But there's also several altars, as you can see here by these arrows, several different altars. And we also have, I believe, Our Lady of Guadalupe over here and some other statues and things around this area. If you want to know more about what these letters are on here, it's all different works of art that we have depicted here and stained glass. So you can check out the St. Dominic's website. There's a link in the description, and it basically, after the blurb on the Sermon on Stone, which you should definitely read, you'll see this map, and then underneath that is all of these letters and what they mean. So, but the main thing that I want you to get out of this is nave, apsis, north transept, south transept, because we will be using that when we talk about some of the windows. So Now, going from bottom to top, we want to talk about the vertical structure and the terms there. So we sit at the arcade level, and Mass is set at the arcade level. The altar and everything is all on the arcade level. Basically, everything up to the pointed arch is arcade level. Then above that is the triforium. Now, the triforium is actually probably the smallest section vertically. It's usually depicted with these like smaller arches, maybe some windows, and usually there's 3 of them, hence triforium. Triforium windows like these little blade things right here. So that's what I meant by 3. And then above that is the clear story, and that's where the stained glass would be, is the clear story. And then above the clear story, obviously, we have the ribbed vaulting of the ceiling, and you can see like the ribbed vaulting here behind me of the St. Dominic's apsis. See? Keyword, apsis. Okay. Anyways, and then we have the flying buttresses, which you can see right here, which is an element of Gothic architecture. And we have the pointed arches. So again, reminder, check out that second video. It's on the elements of Gothic architecture, and we talk a lot more about the reasons for these things. Now, this image is a beautiful picture, not really, of I'm sorry, there was a lot of sunlight, and I was taking it with my phone, so it's not the greatest picture, but this is a beautiful picture of our this is a beautiful image, I will say. Like the actual image itself of this on the stained glass is beautiful, of our Christ in Glory window. And so up here we have this 4 interlocking circles, or what looks like a 4-leaf clover. This is our quatrefoil. So sometimes in churches you'll see 3 of them interlocking. That's known as a trefoil. And so this one's got 4, so it's quatrefoil. And then we have this beautiful intricate design up here as well, and that's known as the tracery. Now, the term tracery, we believe, comes from the tracing floors that were used to basically trace out these very complex patterns for these stained glass windows in the late Gothic architectural design process. And then the last element that I really want to talk about is this blade-looking segment of the window. It's just known as a lancet. And here is an example of a lance head. So you can tell the reason why we started calling it a lancet. It looks basically like a lance head. Lancet. It's a small lance. Anyways, so before I move on, we want to basically talk about the artists, as I said. So there are 3 different artists that have contributed works to our stained glass. One is the Charles Connick Studio of Boston, Max Ingram of Paris, and then the Cummings Studio of San Francisco. Though, as far as we know, I think the Cummings Studio only has 1 window. So yeah, we're not 100% sure on that. It's possible that they may have more, but as of right now, we only know of 1 that they have. So each artist has their own style. Like you'll notice this as we look at each of them in the next coming slides. And so I'm going to try to help and point out these style differences. However, I am not an art expert, so do not quote me on any of this that I'm talking about, but I hope that you can start to see the differences yourself. So I'm going to share again. So first we're going to talk about Charles J Connick. So these are some windows designed by Connick. These are Connick windows. And he is, his studio was opened in 1913 and it closed its doors in 1986. His studio has done the most windows at St. Dominic. So like all the ones that you can see behind me are the ones done by Charles J. Connick. There are several other ones in the transepts, and then in all of the different alcoves that we have at the church as well, including the ones in our nave. Our Lady Chapel. Sorry, not the nave. In the Lady Chapel. And then we have some in the baptistry and then in the vestibule as well. So he's done a lot of the windows. The style you can see depicted here uses smaller cuts of glass, so it creates a more intricate design. There's pure, intense color being used, and you can see that as like it doesn't allow a lot of light in, but it's pure and intense color. And then finally, it's got strong linear designs. Now, Connick style is, and most of all of these artists have a revitalization style of the medieval style, revitalization of that medieval style. However, I would say that Connick includes scripture in a lot of his windows, whereas some of the other ones that you'll see do not. They tend to just use symbols that represent the person. So in this particular instance, as you can see in these windows, you can see the key and you can see the scale, and that helps us to try and figure out who the person is. And this is known as iconography. It's a way of indicating who the people in the stained glass are. So the reason for this is back in the Middle Ages, or the reason for iconography is back in the Middle Ages and before that, the lay people that looked at these windows, they were not literate, like they couldn't read. So they wouldn't be able to read any of this text. I mean, granted, we can't read this text either because it's in Latin, but they wouldn't be able to even read English. So in that way, what the stained glass makers had to do was to convey the story or who the person was by using symbols or attributes that would help the lay people catch on to kind of what's going on. So in the case of like Saint Therese of Lisieux, you might see a bunch of roses in her hand, and that was indicative of her being Saint Therese the Little Flower, you know. And granted, I feel like people in the Middle Ages and before were probably more knowledgeable than we are now, because I mean, how many times have you gone into a church and known exactly who was standing in that window based on things they were holding in their hands? I don't know. Personally, I had this one instance where like a couple months ago, I went into a church. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I went into this church and I saw this Franciscan looking, like he had a Franciscan robe. It was a statue of Franciscan robe and holding a child. And I was like, oh yeah, it's St. Francis. I'm so excited because St. Francis is my patron saint. I get really excited whenever I see him. Turns out, no, that was St. Anthony. Some of you are probably like shaking your heads like, yeah, no, that was definitely St. Anthony to begin with. No, St. Anthony is usually depicted as holding the child Jesus. And St. Francis is usually, as you may already know, he's usually depicted holding birds or maybe with like animals around him. So I knew that, and still my first reaction when I see a Franciscan statue is St. Francis, yay! Yeah. Anyway, sorry, back to this again. I was definitely very embarrassed by that. Okay. So our next artist is Max Ingram of Paris. So this is actually a beautiful picture of our Christ in Glory window that you can see right here. This one I did take as well, but I took it from our choir loft, so it's a little bit closer. You can see it, the details a little bit more clearly. This is another window of his that I took with my phone. So yeah, obviously these images of these artists I definitely pulled from online because I do not know them personally. But anyways, so this is Max Ingram of Paris. He was drafted in the military actually in 1939, and then he was actually held captive at Hoyerswerda. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, Hoyerswerda, from 1940 to 1945. After he got back from the war in like the late 1940s to 1960s is when he designed stained glass for churches. So his studio has done our big transept windows. Remember the north transept, south transept? Yeah, so he designed the windows for those two. He did our big Christ and Glory window, as you can see depicted here. He did all of the windows along the nave. Now the nave, remember, is like the place where we sit as the lay people on the floor plan, right? The lay people sit in the nave. It's the long body of the cross on the floor plan. And then he also actually I think that might be it. Yeah, I think that's it. So yeah, all of the virtues. So the ones along the nave are the virtues, and so he did all of those. And his design style, as you can see, uses bigger cuts of glass. There's not as much intricate details, but he also doesn't use that vibrant like super vibrant colors that you saw with Connick. His are a little bit more subtle. It definitely allows a lot more light to come in and stuff, but there's less details on the faces and stuff like that, as you can see. Now, the following one that I have is on the Cummings Studio. Unfortunately, I don't know too much about the Cummings Studio, and there's not much that we know about it. However, I was doing some research online, and I did find I guess a biography or I'm not exactly sure, on a artist known as Wilhelmina Orthorop, yeah. And she is actually a um, glass designer who was hired by the Cummings Studio. Previously, it was known as the Western Art Glass Studio, and the owner was Harold W. Cummings, and he later changed the name to the Cummings Stained Glass Studio of San Francisco. So Wilhelmina, who I actually have on here, I'm not sure if she was the designer. We actually don't know who the designer is for this, but Wilhelmina was the principal designer at the Cummings Studio around the time when these stained glass were being made and put in. So it's not clear whether she's our designer or not, but maybe she is. And maybe this is her stained glass. But let's talk about the glass itself. So what we have here is you can see there's a similarity in using smaller pieces of glass. There's more details. However, they don't use as vibrant colors as Connick's as a Connick. So it's lets light in, but because it's also a smaller piece of glass, there's a lot more intricate details as well that come through. Now that we've talked about all of the studios, excuse me, all of the studios and their art styles, I don't have too much time left in this talk to go into all of the windows, so or any really of the windows, but I'm going to try to do one window today, and hopefully we will cover the sacraments in the windows and all at my next video. All right, so the major one that we're going to talk about is one of the most important scenes that we have depicted in stained glass, and that is that of the crucifixion. All right, so this is our crucifixion window right here. It is found in the apsis. Remember the term apsis. It is actually this E right here at the very top. And so if you look behind me, it is this window right over here. It's the crucifixion window. Now, the crucifixion window that we have here was done by Connick. So the reason we had to talk about the artist, it's done by Connick. And then you can see a lot of different elements. So the first one I want to pull out, I pulled out here, and I'm really sorry that it's so blurry. It's, again, taken with my phone. So this, you can see there's a hand reaching downward. This is the hand of God, or symbolic of the hand of God reaching downward. And then around Jesus's arms, you have what looks like four doves. And as we all know, the dove is the symbol of the Holy Spirit. So just above the arms, we have, this looks to me like the sun and the moon right here. So why are they covered? You know, I think this is very much a representation of the clouds kind of covering at Calvary when Jesus dies on the cross. You know, there, I don't know if you've seen the Passion, but basically the sunshine becomes very cloudy. It starts to rain. There's like the earth shakes. The veil of the temple is like torn asunder, torn in two. And so I think this is very much a representation of how the light was blotted out at his death, because it was all mourning the death of Christ. Now, unlike most crucifixion scenes, crucifixion, normally you think of Golgotha, you'll see Mary, John, Mary Magdalene. However, our window is more allegorical than the scene at Golgotha. So what you have here is you have Jesus on the cross, and then you have David, King David, who Jesus is from the lineage of King David. And then you have Isaiah the prophet right here, and you can tell who they are because this one says David right here on his arm, and then you can see Isaiah right here on his what he's holding. And then underneath Christ, you have a cup. So the way I see this is the representation of Christ in his three roles. He is priest, prophet, and king. Priest, prophet, and king. So we've got Jesus offering himself as the perfect sacrifice. He offers himself. He freely gives himself on the cross. So this is like a priest offers the body, the bread and wine, which become eventually the body and blood of Christ. But in this case, Jesus is the priest. He's doing the action of offering himself. And so hence this is the representation of him as priest over the cup. Then we have the prophet, right? The prophet Isaiah here, but Jesus was the prophet as well. And then we have King David. I mean, that one's quite self-explanatory. Jesus comes from the line of David. So he is a king in that spectrum as well. So, and then underneath, and I've actually blown this up further for you guys to see. It's blurry, blown up though, unfortunately. You'll see a bunch of waters kind of coming out from underneath the chalice. These seven rivers represent the divine mercy of God that are poured out at his redemption. The seven rivers then lead us to the sacraments, the seven sacraments, and then the seven sacraments lead us to the virtues. So note there's also seven virtues, by the way, but not that the seven sacraments link to the seven virtues. It honestly depends on your ability to receive. So you choose to receive those virtues. And then in addition, you'll see 12 grapes, these like little purple and red berry looking things here. They're grapes. And I think, in my opinion, I could be wrong about this, I think this translates quite literally to the 12 fruits of the Holy Spirit, because once you receive virtue by accepting it, you accept virtue, you will reap the fruits of the Holy Spirit. So I think those are symbolic of the 12 fruits. And then you also see the 12 sheep or the 12 lambs down below here. And I think that this represents the 12 disciples or 12 apostles of Jesus. And in extension, us, because they were the ones that initially followed the greatest shepherd of all, which is Jesus. And we in turn follow them who then who lead us to Jesus. So we are all ultimately sheep. And so this is just a representation of us as well. Another element which I completely forgot to even think about in my notes is these four figures which are depicted around this window. So these are the caricatures that are, or the animal creatures that are associated with the four evangelists. So it's very blurry, so I don't know if you can read it, but this one is St. Luke. We've got this one, can't quite see. Oh no, took us away. This eagle is St. John. We've got the man, or the angel-looking creature, and that's St. Matthew. And then you've got the lion, which is St. Mark. So yeah, and then I'm going to, when we talk about the big window, which unfortunately you guys have already seen this because I keep clicking it on accident, you can see that we've got the same kind of representation going on right here with the eagle for John, the ox for Luke, the lion for Mark, and the angel character for, or human with wings creature for Matthew. Couldn't think for a second. So there's some parallelism between the window done by Connick and this window done by Max Ingram. Now, reason I wanted to show you this window was because I wanted to talk about how our church is facing. So basically, churches in the medieval ages and prior were usually built facing the east, i.e., when all the lay people look forward, they all face the east. Our church, on the other hand, built facing the west. So or west. I can't remember which side is east or west, but basically it's built facing the west. So the reason it was built facing the east, though, was because it's believed that Christ will come again from the east. Like in his second coming, he's to come from the east. And so people would build their churches facing the east. Graves would be built on the eastern side of hills, or burial sites would be on the eastern side of hills, because you want them to rise first, with the Lord when he comes. And then masses, like the priest says it ad orientem, or like facing towards the east. Yes, that means that the people faced his back, but he would basically be facing God when he said the mass. And so there's some beauty in that as well. Now, our crucifixion window obviously is in the west, because we face our crucifixion window. And when we turn to the east, we see this beautiful Christ in glory window. And to me, it kind of feels like you're looking as God as he comes in glory and stuff. So it's a little cool to see this on the way out. If you look up, if you look down, then unfortunately you don't see it. But if you look up, you get to see this beautiful, beautiful window above you. All right, and next time we will be going into the sacraments in stained glass. I am really sorry that we only covered one stained glass, but I really did want to talk about our artists, because we do want to give them absolutely give them credit for the beautiful glass that they've done for us. And I also wanted to go over these terms. We'll do a little bit of a review on the next one, but just so you know what they are, just wanted to quickly, give you those terminologies. All right, and I'm going to stop my share now. Okay, so I hope that was enlightening. Okay, maybe not. But I'm glad I was able to share this information with you. In our next video, as I already talked about, we will be going over the sacraments. We probably won't go over all of them because there are 7 windows. There's these 2 windows and then these 4 windows. You can't really see this one right here that you can't really see my finger pointing to either, but there are 6 windows in the front that talk about the sacraments. And you're wondering, yeah, why is there 6 windows when there's 7 sacraments? Well, 2 of them are in 1 window because there's a similarity between the 2 of them, and we'll talk about that a little bit in our next video. So I hope you will tune in. I gave you a little snippet of like what's the intriguing aspects of our next video. And as I've mentioned in our past, please post any, in our past videos, please post any comments or questions that you have into the comments section below, and I'll be happy to try and address it in a future video. I hope this Lenten season has gotten off to a good start for you guys, and if not, it's never too late to try again. So make a fresh start. Anyways, I hope to see you in our next video. Bye. Bye.